Have you seen a picture of coins or animals or people, along with the question, which of these does not match the others? It's fun as a game, but it's not so much fun when the identified mismatch is in our hearts. And yet, it's one of the many ways that the Lord helps us grow. He points out one mismatch and then another. And it seems that we never get past this facet of our growth. As the Lord forms in us a new life in Christ, He removes one thing and then another that don't match the new life. Here's a mismatch that I have realized in my own heart in the last month. As a boy, I was a history nerd, and I especially loved biographies of heroic soldiers. And since I grew up mostly in the South, I read all about Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and Jeb Stuart. These biographies were definitely shaped by the lost cause romanticism, and I saw these generals as dashing and brave and chivalrous and smarter than their foes. Even at a young age, I knew that slavery was a great evil. And yet somehow in the landscape of my heart, that romantic vision of Southern generals still had a place. I had not thought much about that for many years until we moved to Richmond in 2007. By then, my history studies had made Martin Luther King one of my main heroes, and I was all for the advances of the civil rights movement. And though I disagreed with many of Barack Obama's views, I thought it was actually a good thing in itself that we elected a black president. Yet somehow, in the landscape of my heart, the statues of the generals still had a place. Obviously, they didn't match what I believed, but there they were in some romanticized corner of my little boy's heart. And their presence was still strong enough that when we walked or biked on Monument Avenue, I looked on the statues with some fondness. As a follower of Jesus, that was a huge mismatch in my heart, but I didn't even see it. And as many of us are seeing now, it was a huge mismatch for a street in the heart of our city, a city that for the most part truly does aspire to the ideals of justice for all. But my goodness, what a painful and complicated process. And all the more because many of the drivers for those for and against removing the statues, many of the drivers have little resemblance to the grace and wisdom of God as He makes similar changes to the mismatches in our own hearts. What can we as Christians bring to this ongoing conversation in our city? How about some humility? That's only fitting since God has removed so many glaring and embarrassing mismatches from our hearts. And how about some grace for those whose views we find foolish or filled with mismatches? Voices of grace and humility can shape the larger conversation. And then, joined with prayer and a readiness to listen, we can help our city move through this hard season. And may we honor Jesus and bless all of our neighbors as we do.